Ladies and gentlemen, we are back in home kingdom. KvK is over, the map is gone, and we are unfortunately back on the barbarian fort grind for the next couple of weeks. So today I'm going to go over my most recent KvK. We're going to go over my stats, the stats for the actual kingdom and the entirety of the KvK, all the different camps. For those of you that have been keeping up with the channel, this was the Song of Troy KvK, my first time ever experiencing this KvK, and so I'm also going to share with you guys my thoughts on the KvK format itself, the pros and the cons, and then later in the video I'm kind of going to recap the KvKs that I was a part of in 2025, because I think that paints a really important picture for sort of how I felt about this KvK during and after and with the outcome. And of course, if you guys were paying attention, you guys would know that we unfortunately lost KvK. This is our third loss in a row, so if you guys are curious to know what I'm going to be doing and what 1568 is doing, stay till the end of the video because we're going to address that later on. But before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I'm a sponsored partnered creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, consider subscribing down below and dropping a thumbs up while you're down there. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. All right, I guess the first thing we should go over is the actual matchup for this Song of Troy KvK. As you guys can see, I'm in 1568, so we were in the Dardania camp in the top right corner. We would be allies with Mycenae in the bottom left hand corner, and we would be going up against Aeolia and Lycia. Okay, so this was kind of a diagonal corners KvK, and I'm going to talk more about sort of like the matchmaking and all that other stuff later in the video when I kind of recap the last year of KvKs for me and for 1568. But going into this KvK, we knew that we definitely had a shot at winning here, but we knew that it would not be easy, and honestly we did genuinely just lose, right? I mean, straight up, we just lost the KvK. You guys know I never involve myself in drama unless I'm pulled into it somehow, and really there's no drama, right? I mean, just straight up, we played KvK, we didn't win, it is what it is. GG, it was well fought by everyone around. Okay, again, we'll talk more about the KvK in general a little bit later in the video, but I kind of just wanted to show this map to set the stage. But now I want to shift over and share with you guys my own stats for this KvK. So at the end of the day, we got almost 46 million kills in this KvK. Definitely a solid one for me, not the best, not the worst. And really, my fighting style for me personally in this KvK was to just face roll it. I didn't care. I was clicking the middle of the enemy ball. I just went in. I didn't play for trades. I knew kind of no matter what, when we were going up against 63, that my trades were not going to be good, right? I mean, it just was what it was. So I just decided, screw it, I'll just tank. I'll just face roll everything. And that was kind of my strategy. I also had more power this KvK than I typically have, and so I didn't care if I got deads on the field or anything like that, which really I don't think I did throughout this KvK. I did end up losing about 6 million power just from joining rallies and garrisons and things like that, but genuinely my fighting style this KvK was super aggressive to the point where it was pretty much reckless, honestly, and I have a reason for that. I'll talk about that later in this video, but for now, let's go over which of my commanders actually got me the most amount of kill points here, and we can sort of break it down by troop type, so that way you guys get an idea as to where I'm at when I'm looking at the meta from my perspective and how I think things are performing. So as you can see here, we've got the start kills for everything on my account. This was the first KvK that I used Achilles and Gangam Chan. Gangam Chan actually came out partway through the KvK, if I'm not mistaken. And if we go ahead and reveal all of the kill points here, we will see that of course Emperor Qin came out on top here with the most amount of kill points gained. This is really a surprise to nobody. Emperor Qin is the strongest commander in the game. Even with Sun Tzu Prime in the game, I still feel like Emperor Qin is the best. I mean, straight up, it's just so hard to get around the fact that Emperor Qin is just easy mode, right? Like, it's just constant 5 target hits. You're just always getting that chip damage at all times. You don't have to think about anything. You don't have to play it smart. You don't have to do anything. You pretty much can slap any secondary behind Emperor Qin and he's gonna perform great, even with old commanders like YSG, right? Not to say YSG is bad, obviously he's great, but like, if Emperor Qin can be meta paired with a commander that came out in 2018, I think that says all you need to know about how strong Emperor Qin actually is. Okay, the other thing I want to point out here is, like, throughout a majority of Kingsland, my single archer march was like 70% tier 4 units, right? Like, at that point I was joining joining the rallies, I was joining the garrisons, and I had killed off a ton of my tier 5 archers. I only run one archer march, so typically I have fewer archers than anything else. So even with that, he was still able to pull down the most number of kill points out of any commander here. Of course, Baichi with Liu Che came in second place here. They used full T5 the entire KvK with pincer formation. Pretty much my best gear, best armaments and everything were on them, and they still came in second place, which is nuts. And then we've got Achilles Gengemchan, which a majority of the KvK I did use these two together. I think I actually ran Achilles primary just to get that AoE off every single time. Obviously, if you want to maximize the healing, you're going to flip them around. You're going to run Gengemchan primary. I tried it that way. I didn't see a massive difference, frankly. I mean, maybe it was a small sample size, and again, I did play very recklessly this KvK, so I just went for the guaranteed AoE damage. That's not a recommendation, that's just what I did this KvK. Then we've got YSG. Of course, the YSG and the Zhuge Liang, the kill points here are split. They were both behind Emperor Qin. I ran most of the early KvK with Zhuge Liang, and then in Kingsland and in later parts of the KvK I just ran with YSG, because again, I realized there's no point in actually going for the good trades because I'm playing so aggressive, I'm playing so reckless. Just go for max damage. So I just threw the YSG in there, and that's it. I just called it a day. Then we've got Ragnar CPO, and honestly, my Ragnar CPO, I made an entire video about this already, but this is the first KvK where I kind of felt like Ragnar CPO has definitely shown their age, unfortunately. I know Ragnar Prime's not that old of a commander, but his march speed just can't compete, frankly. Like, it's just too slow of a march, and genuinely, even in my last KvK, I feel like they performed fine, right? So that being said, I've got good gear on that march. I've got decent skill damage armaments on that march, but this is the last KvK that we're going to be rocking the Ragnar CPO. I'm kind of just waiting to see if we hear more about the next formations before I just swap all that stuff over to pincer. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But yeah, Ragnar CPO is probably getting retired after this KvK, depending on the next formation release, if we get one, or I should say if field gets one. It could be a rally garrison formation or something like that. Then we've got King Arthur, who actually just performed worse than my Ragnar CPO. And here's the thing I noticed about King Arthur in this KvK. Earlier on in the KvK, I tried to do King Arthur primary, Achilles secondary, and then I ran Hua with Joan as my second march, and as you can see, I gave up on that almost immediately, like within an hour, not even an hour. Like, I was like, okay, no, actually no, that's not going to work. I don't regret that, but looking back on it, I probably should have run the Hua with Arthur. The problem with that was that going into this KvK, I did actually switch around a couple of armaments in anticipation of running 2 combo damage marches, because in my last KvK, Arthur with Philip performed really solid, right? So I kind of thought, okay, we got 2 new cav commanders, like surely I'm gonna want to keep running the Arthur Philip, and then the other one's gonna be combo, so I might as well run 2 combo. So I made that commitment, and then I realized afterwards that that probably wasn't the play. You know, hindsight is 2020, but really, as you can see here, I tried to run King Arthur with Philip, and that was the majority of the KvK. I also switched to William at one point just to see if maybe I could pull something off there. Really, the King Arthur Philip combo, in my opinion, right now, if you're going up against enemies that are very strong, as I did in this KvK, this combo is almost like you're just kill feeding, honestly. Like, it is so squishy. I know like the benefit is instant proc, but like it literally dies so quick. It will be the first thing to die. It won't be even close. Yes, you're going to trade negative a lot unless you are able to micromanage that, right? And with it being cavalry, it's oftentimes going to be faster than other marches, and so you keep running into this situation where like my King Arthur Philip was sort of the way that Nevsky Joan used to be, right? If you guys remember, like a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago, when everybody was running Nevsky Joan, that was the march that would always find itself swinging out into the enemy ball, right? It always found itself out of place, and a lot of times that's because it was the fastest thing on the field. And in this KvK, I was just getting flashbacks. It was just King Arthur Philip just kept dying. It kept dying, and really, like, if you look at the stats, there's no question why that's the case. There's just no tankiness here, right? There's no tankiness on this march at all. It's all attack, all damage, and that's fine. But in a situation where your enemy is super strong, again, you're just pretty much kill feeding with this march, in my opinion. I mean, that's how I felt. These are my armaments here. Definitely could use improvement. This is my second set of combo armaments. This is my gear. So again, it's not the best thing in the world, but like King Arthur with Philip definitely did not meet my expectations. I mean, really, King Arthur got less kills than Ragnar CPO, right? I mean, like that's kind of embarrassing, unfortunately. Not to say King Arthur is bad. In fact, I do still think King Arthur is insanely good. He just needs a really good pair, right? So we're kind of waiting on that. Of course, you could still run him with Achilles. I'm not going to get into the cav pairs in this video, but that's kind of where I'm at. I also ran a little bit of William Wallace here. There were some points in Kingsland where I popped the buff. For those of you that don't know, the Athena patron skill gives you scrolls, and that gives gives you some of the scrolls will give you an extra army, right? So I don't, for those of you that don't know, I don't ever max crystal tech, but in this KvK, because of those scrolls, I was able to run a 6th march, and that 6th march for me was usually William Wallace with Alexander the Great. Now, is that a good army? No, straight up it's not. I only ran it with tier 4 because I knew it wasn't a good army. We just needed more boots on the ground, really. I mean, a lot of times going up against 63, we were outnumbered. Again, I'll talk about that later, but I just wanted more armies on the field, and so I just threw it in there, and I figured it's T4, whatever, who cares. And at a certain point I was running King Arthur with Philip with all T4 as well, because again, I knew like whether there's T5 in it or T4, it's gonna die immediately, so I might as well have a cheaper hospital bill, right? Especially if it's gonna keep getting out of position and getting swarmed. It's like just not worth it. And then down here, I don't know where these kills came from. I must have thrown something out there just to farm kills. I don't know where it came from. And then we've got the Huajun that I barely use. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of best performing commanders. Let's take a look at the total here for all of the troop types, and you could see, of course, infantry came in first. My best gear and armaments are on my infantry, so that's not a surprise. Cavalry came in second, and archers came in third. Now keep in mind, I did run 2, sometimes 3 infantry marches in this KvK. Throughout the entirety of KvK, I did run 2 cavalry marches, and throughout all of KvK, I only ran 1 archer march. Okay, so for a quarter of all of my kills to just come from my 1 archer march is kind of insane, right? So I don't want you guys to look at this and be like, oh wow, archers are in 3rd place out of 3, they're the worst troop type. Like no. It's actually crazy that it's 25.5% of my total kills for 1 march. Emperor Qin continues to be just dominant. Now with Sun Tzu Prime in the game, this might shift things a little bit more, where my infantry get even more for next KvK, but that's all speculation. So this is kind of the breakdown here. Cavalry definitely got a noticeable bump this KvK with the introduction of Genghis Khan and Achilles. This commander pair is great. Like, it's very solid, much tankier than I thought it would be. Even the healing on Genghis Khan is very good. It is the way healing should have always worked in Rise of Kingdoms, if I'm being honest with you. So I'm glad that they have that implemented into the game. And really, like I said before with King Arthur, Cavs really needed a tanky march here. So Genghis Khan basically fills that void, and that he rocks with Achilles, right? Like straight up, they're good. So now if I were to only run 1 Cav march, would I run that march? I would probably point you in the direction still towards King Arthur with Achilles. I have to think about that a little bit more, but just knee-jerk reaction, that's probably the way I would go. But again, maybe I'll talk about that in another video. Taking a look at the stats for the whole KvK, here you can see the camp breakdown. Now, as you guys know, we were in Dardania and we were paired up with Mycenae, okay, going up against Lycia and Aeolia. I think taking a look at the kingdom breakdown paints a little bit of a better picture here when it comes to, you know, 2218 doing great, most number of points here, but then we've got 63 and 2914 over here coming in 2nd and 3rd place. Then we've got ourselves in kingdom 1568 along with our campmates, and then kingdom 3560, so campmates of 63. So for a lot of KvK, we were going up against 63 and 3560. They just had more people on the field for a larger portion of time, and it just is what it is. Now, did we perform horribly? No. Did some people need to have a stern talking to after KvK? That is definitely what I am told. Okay, now we'll talk more about 1568 later in the video. Of course, I'm not a kingdom leader, alliance leader, or anything like that, so just keep that in mind when we go over things here. But ultimately, there was a ton of fights going on in KvK, and the last sort of sprint there, or I should say marathon really, from Pass 7 through Kingsland was kind of nuts, and we took the L. I mean, straight up. Again, there's like really not much else to say there. Talking about the Song of Troy KvK itself, really interesting KvK format. I personally thought it was fine. It wasn't the best ever, it wasn't the worst ever. I thought it was good. I mean, like, really, you've got the patron skills, which is kind of like, you know, like Ark of Osiris skills almost for the KvK, and each player can choose sort of which patron to go with and when they use their skills, and there's a little bit of coordination there. You know, really the healing skill with Athena was like the most impactful skill throughout the entirety of KvK. It's the one that a majority of players seem to be using. It was the one that moved the needle the most. You just have to be very careful with your hospital when you use that one. So a lot of the other skills were kind of like pointless. The Poseidon skill with slowdown was devastating if used by a whale at the right time. I would say that was the one where if you had the like really good open field awareness and when you should use it and why you're using it and all that stuff, and you had the power to really capitalize on it, the Poseidon slowdown skill could actually really catch you off guard and just smoke you, right? But again, you got to really be the type of player that can use it, and you need to know exactly when to use it. So there's a little bit more of a skill gap there than just like the healing skill, for example. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna retreat and heal myself, and everyone who wants to heal, come with me, right? Like that kind of thing. I will say the most annoying skill was probably the siege skill that takes down a fort to half health. That was the one that, you know, pretty much everyone I talked to agreed that that one kind of sucks. Like it just made KvK worse, just straight up. And I know, you know, fort burn times are a big point of contention in the community historically, especially back in the day with like fort stacking, right? Like it was just impossible to get through the fort walls. And so I can understand why the siege skill exists, and also to give siege players another thing that they can do, right? Like that's just something unique to siege, and it makes them feel useful, special, whatever, and that's fine, right? Like that's good. It's good to have that and have a unique thing that they can do, especially because you're never going to rally a fort or a flag with siege commanders, right? I mean, or at least you shouldn't be. But the problem is that, you know, with the siege skill, taking a fort down to half health with the siege skill felt really bad because it didn't require any actual skill, right? Like there was no actual, like that fort could have a full garrison, full troops, whatever. There's just nothing you can do about it besides like obviously charge the field and kill the siege unit, right? But ultimately, like they're probably going to get the skill off. They're probably, when you're not paying attention or whatever the case might be, they're going to get half that fort burned for free without really getting to do anything. So I don't know, that was just the one skill that like was annoying for the most amount of people. Like that was the one that kept coming up in discussions where it's like, yeah, this is just dumb. Like what, you just get a free half a fort burn, right? Which again, I understand why they put it in the game, because people complain about fort burn times, but it just feels bad when like you've got a fort that's fully stacked, great garrison, everything, and it's just like, okay, well I guess we're losing half our health, right? Like it just doesn't feel like the way that they should solve the fort burn time problem, in my opinion. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments if you've used the siege burn skill and what you think of it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I thought the Song of Troy was fine, right? I thought as a KvK game mode, you know, I think the siege skill needs a little bit of tweaking. Besides that, I wouldn't mind playing it again. Also, you know, the sort of marathon from the past 7 all the way through Kingsland, this was the one KvK where like past 7 does actually matter. We really fought for over a week straight, which is kind of crazy, and like there's something to be desired there when it comes to quality of life, right? Like it's just really sucks on leadership to have to constantly, for like over a week straight, just constantly playing the game every single day and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I think the timing might need to be tweaked there, or something about the map. I'm not really sure. I don't do map planning or flag planning or anything like that, so I'm not the guy to ask for that. But that was also another thing that we kind of noticed, was like a little bit, just felt a little bit bad that it was such a long duration of time where fighting was actually going to matter. And again, you know, I can see why the devs did this, because a lot of people have complained that past 7 is pointless, right? It's literally just you take the pass, you fill it with farms, and then you hold till Kingsland, and that's pretty much it, right? You stack forts on top of it and you're good to go. So again, I understand why they did this, but maybe there's something to be tweaked there to make it a little bit better as well. All right, with all that being said, now that I've gone over my stats and kind of what I think of the Song of Troy KvK, and we've gone over the different kingdom stats and everything, I want to give you guys kind of my experience with not just this KvK, but with KvKs in 2025, just period. This is going to be a retrospective on the entire year of KvKs for me, and so you guys kind of understand where I'm coming from. Okay, so if you take a look here, we did 4 KvKs in 2025. We started with Heroic Anthem, we did Storm of Stratagems, Tides of War, and we ended the year with Song of Troy. Back at the beginning of the year in March, when we went into Heroic Anthem, we landed on a map with 1875, which is a very strong kingdom, Imperium, everybody knows that. And alongside our allies of 2489, we popped off in that KvK, and everybody who was there knows how impactful 1568 was, with actually coming out and getting the win in that KvK against 1875. Of course, it's a team effort, but like we definitely pulled our weight, and it was a super challenging KvK, right? Against all odds, we pull out the victory, and we started off 2025 strong, even though it was a tough matchup. Then in June, we queued for Storm of Stratagems, and I think the best way to explain that KvK is to just show you guys who the allies and enemies were at the beginning of KvK. So of course we were Fire Camp 1568, and if you look, you know, the camps circled in red are allies, the blue ones are allies, of course. So we were allied with Earth and Water, and we were going up against Wind, the Green Camp, and Daybreak. And if you just look at the power distribution for all of these different camps as well as the kill points, you can quickly see the outlier, right? I mean, clearly Earth is the outlier. They've got less power, they've got less kill points. It almost felt like an unfair matchup for them. Like who were they supposed to ally with, right? I think that's kind of what it came down to. Not to say that they're bad or anything like that, but just like if like just just look at the numbers. Like, it doesn't look like they fit in this KvK, right? I mean, that's kind of the conclusion that everyone came to. And in fact, about a month into the KvK, Earth Camp came to that conclusion themselves. They were like, yeah, we're done. We're just not going to keep playing this KvK. It's pointless. It's an unfair matchup for us. We're just going to throw in the towel, right? And like, I don't think anybody even blamed them, but it just sucked that we were going to take that loss, because obviously we weren't going to be able to 2v3 without Earth Camp playing at all, right? So again, there was no real drama there. There was nothing crazy. It's just like, we just kind of got screwed over by matchmaking, right? So we took the L in Storm of Stratagems with the matchmaking. Then we went into Tides of War in August, and you could see it was like, I think this was literally first pop, right? Like, this ended on August 1st and this started August 19th. So we literally just went right back into KvK, into Tides of War. We found ourselves in a KvK with another Imperium 3308. I'm pretty sure we even dropped some power going into this Tides of War, and we still found ourselves in a KvK with an Imperium against 3308, and like, no excuses, right? Like, we went into Kingsland, we tried to cut the enemy off, our plan didn't work, and we lost Kingsland. Like, again, no excuses, no drama, just straight up the enemy outplayed us and we lost, and that's it, right? So from that point, okay, we realized a couple of things. One, we need to drop even more power, because first of all, we were just not performing up to our level, but also 2 of our 3 KvKs we find ourselves with Imperiums, and we were going to try to avoid that going into Song of Troy, and we wanted to make sure that we kind of could like fight within our actual capacity, and so that's what we did. So we find ourselves in Song of Troy. Unfortunately, the timing of this didn't work out super well, because R4s, we were going to do the pop before this, but like R4s had conflicting commitments for around holidays and things like that, and so I don't think Kingsland lined up or something, I'm not really sure, but either way, we decided to do Song of Troy. It was going to be, I think this was a pioneer test still, because this is obviously a new KvK format, so we were going to try something new. And again, we found ourselves in a map with 2 Imperiums. Now these, I mean, they didn't really move the needle at all here, but the point was, like, we're still finding ourselves in a matchmaking bracket that is clearly outclassing us at this point, right? And just to be clear, like, we lost to 2563, right? Like, that was straight up, like I said earlier, they had more armies on the field, and they had armies on the field for longer, and they just did better than us, right? So we took the L, and for this KvK, we definitely dropped a lot of power going into Song of Troy, because again, it's important. If you're a kingdom, you want to make sure that you're actually queuing against kingdoms that you feel like you can fight up against. And so, like, as a kingdom, if you've got deadweight in the kingdom, or not deadweight, but you know, even just players that maybe aren't reaching their potential or sort of what they should be reaching for their power level, or if you've got people that are just constantly KP chasing and they're not fighting with the objective, they're off doing something else, and they're not coming online when those big warning pings are happening in Discord, you know, like, there was some fat that could be trimmed, right? So even dropping power going into Song of Troy, it was a really tough matchup, right? Straight up, it was a tough matchup for us. We fought as hard as we could. I showed off the stats earlier in the video. And so for me, when I reflect back on the KvK at the beginning of the year heroic anthem, we see Storm of Stratagems and Tides of War and this Song of Troy, there is a very consistent trend for me in all of these KvKs. And let me be very clear, like I said earlier, I'm not an alliance leader, I don't plan anything, I'm not part of leadership for the kingdom or anything like that, okay? So this is just strictly my opinion, this is strictly my experience as a player throughout this last year in 2025. Every single one of these KvKs has been defined by pilots, right? And like, look, that's the elephant in the room, we're just going to talk about it. I find it frustrating as a player, right? And like, look, I know I'm going to sound like I'm complaining at this point, but I've really held my tongue throughout the entirety of 2025, because I don't like complaining about this stuff, because it's like, you know, if you lose a KvK and you say, oh well, it's pilots, it kind of just sounds like you're being a sore loser, right? It kind of sounds like you're just making excuses. But at this point, after 4 KvKs, one of them being a win, I have to say something, right? Like, I have to say something at some point, because it's so clear that this is still a big problem with the game, okay? The side that wins is the side that has the most number of people online for the most number of time. And like, look, I'm not going to point fingers or name names or anything like that, but like, let's just be honest here. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. The current meta is piloting as much as possible. That's still the meta. That's why they have the pioneer test with the war frenzy limit. Who knows how that's going? Hopefully it's going well. We have no idea. But for all these KvKs, that was not a thing. So I was not able to witness that or experience that firsthand. So from my perspective, in 4 KvKs where there's been nothing done to combat piloting is categorically the way that you win KvKs in 2025. That's my experience, and I find it frustrating as a player, because, you know, I've got a lot of KvKs under my belt. I don't know if this only goes back to 2023, but I've been in 1568 for years. It's going to be really challenging for you guys to find other other content creators that have been in the same kingdom for years and years and years, right? And there's reasons I stay here, and we'll get into that in a minute. But as somebody who hasn't changed kingdoms, right, like that kingdom variable is a constant throughout the years, I've noticed the game change. I've noticed the game change from the push and pull of you have downtime, the enemy has downtime, right? That's the push and pull. And in those scenarios, Kingdom 1568 would often come out ahead because we have some insane people in this kingdom and in leadership that were willing to grind longer than anybody else. But as time has gone on throughout these KvKs, we've seen piloting go up and up and up and up with no consequences, by the way. And the problem with that is we no longer have that push and pull. The enemies don't have a downtime, right? And I'm not talking about just my most recent KvK, although that was abundantly clear to anybody watching. In multiple of these KvKs, we kept going up against enemies that don't have a downtime, okay? And everyone knows why, straight up. I mean, even at this point, the developers have admitted it. And so for me, again, I'm just talking about my personal experience in Kingdom 1568 throughout 2025. It is incredibly frustrating to see time and time again, we see that the way to win KvKs the most consistently is to use pilots in a big way, right? And the problem with that is not just that it feels bad, right? Like, okay, the enemy never goes offline, gosh, I wonder why, right? But on top of that, you know, people get discouraged. This is our third loss in a row, right? And so people get discouraged and they're like, man, like I keep losing. And like sometimes you question the kingdom, sometimes you question leadership, you question matchmaking, you question the developers, you question all this stuff. But at a certain point, people either migrate or quit, or what we see a lot in 1568 is people migrate then quit. That's like historically people leave the kingdom and they realize that it's the same or worse everywhere else, and then they actually just quit the game. Like that is kind of, it's almost like a meme at this point because it happens so often. And so it sucks for me as somebody who's been in the same kingdom for so long to see this happen time and time again, right? It just grinds down the morale of the kingdom more and more because Kingdom 1568, say what you want, I've been here for years, I know firsthand experience, the reason people like to play here is the community, right? That's why I've been here the whole time. And the other thing is I'm a content creator, and 1568 does not require that you use pilots, which you cannot say about most competitive kingdoms in the game. Like I said, that's the meta. And so a lot of the high-end kingdoms, straight up, you have to have pilots. You must have pilots in order to be in that kingdom. 1568 is not like that. It's a little bit more community oriented. And while we've had people come and go over the years, there's still a chunk of people that I hear on voice and I'm like, oh, I know that guy, I know that girl, this is a person I've been playing with for years now. And you know, with our third loss in a row, there's always the people that are like, the smack talk is like, oh, Kingdom 1568, it's a dying kingdom, they're disbanding, it's all over. And it's like, that's just not true. It's just not true, at least not yet, right? All kingdoms die eventually, but I think you would be hard pressed to find a kingdom that is consistently matched against Imperiums and has lost 3 in a row that hasn't disbanded, that hasn't ended up dying, right? And I think that that is something that leadership in 1568, especially in this mayhem, they can feel really, really proud of because that is so incredibly rare. I mean, everybody knows it, right? Usually if big players lose 2 KvKs or whatever, they're like, oh, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, right? And yet here we are, 1568 is still around. So to answer the question, no, I am not migrating. Okay, no, 1568 is not dead. This is not a dead kingdom. We are not disbanding. Of course, after every KvK, there is some restructuring that happens. Leadership has asked some people to leave. Other people have decided that they wanted to leave even before this KvK, so it's not even because of the loss. Some people are leaving and coming back later. Like there's definitely some changes, right? And 1568 in 2026 is not the same as 1568 in 2023, but unfortunately the game is not what it was in 2023 either, right? And when the current meta is piloting and you've got a kingdom that, you know, tries to perform at a high level without mandating piloting, then, you know, you're gonna end up in a situation where you're gonna be in a lot of tough matchups, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. Just to recap here, I'm not migrating. 1568's not dead. Leadership is not disbanding. We actually have some really great leadership right now, and we are recruiting. In fact, we are looking for people that value community over everything. So if that sounds like you can reach out to the people that are recruiting in 1568. Don't reach out to me, that's not me. But if you want to be a part of a competitive kingdom that's definitely on the smaller side but doesn't require piloting, and you yourself are a competitive player, maybe 1568 is the place for you, right? And again, I feel like I am the best example of that, right? I mean, how many other people, especially content creators, do you know, and this isn't me taking a shot at them, by the way, this is just me pointing out that I've always stayed in my own lane, right? But how many other content creators do you know, and even other high-end players do you know, that stay in the same kingdom for years and years and years? It's incredibly uncommon in Rise of Kingdoms in 2025 and 2026, and that's how you know the community here is good. Okay, and I've said it once, I'll say it again, the community is what makes this game fun. Okay, and so I am going to stay somewhere and play somewhere where I have fun personally. I'm not going to chase the win. I'm not going to chase the autarch. I'm not going to let some Joe Schmo log into my account to play for me just so that way we can get the W, because at the end of the day, this is a video game. And that, like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills where I'm the only one that's like saying that constantly. I have to keep reminding people, like, guys, this is a video game. Why is someone else playing your video game for you? Like, what are you doing? Okay, I get why they do it. Okay, I understand. Like I said, it's the meta, but all of that to say, okay, when we see face to face with the developers and we see other things coming out where, you know, they're trying to combat piloting, and you're like, wow, Omniarch has such an aggressive stance on that. He's so critical of it, and he's so, you know, willing to throw the kitchen sink at that problem. It's like, yes, because I have watched in real time how bad it affects the game. Right, and so I, as a player, am sick of dealing with it. Hopefully you guys can see where I'm coming from now that I've recapped my last few KvKs. I miss the days where strong kingdoms had downtimes, just like we do. That's really all it comes down to. I feel like that is part of strategy in Rise of Kingdoms that is completely gone. I feel like planning around enemy downtimes was something that you could rely on as a strategy, and it made matchmaking a lot more interesting, and the game has lost that, and I think that's unfortunate, because what we've gained instead is something far worse. But I'm not trying to beat a dead horse with this video. But guys, that's gonna do it for this video. That's been my experience this KvK, and also my experience in the last year. Frankly, I'm just gonna come out and say it, KvKs have been getting less fun. They've been getting less fun, and that has basically nothing to do with the kingdom that I'm in or who I am as a player. It has everything to do with the fact that we keep ending up against enemies that somehow stay online forever. That's annoying, right? And again, I'm not pointing the finger at the enemy, I'm pointing the finger at the fact that that's even allowed. And so then if I circle back to why did I play so recklessly during this KvK, it just comes out of a place of frustration, because it's like, man, here we are yet again, the same problem time and time again. And I spent all year collecting commanders and upgrading equipment and upgrading armaments and all this other stuff, and eventually it just feels kind of futile. Like, you sit back and wonder, like, why am I doing all this? Why am I spending all this time and effort to make my account better when clearly the enemy has an unfair advantage? Or at least from my perspective, I feel like it's unfair. I mean, you guys can let me know what you think about piloting in the comments below, but it'd be like going into an all natural bodybuilder competition and then you realize everyone you're going up against is on steroids. It's like, okay, well, why did I just train for the whole last year? Like, what is even the point? That's kind of how I found myself in this last KvK, and I kind of just face rolled into the ball, because I'm like, here we go again, it's the same thing over and over and over again, and it feels like not enough is being done to combat that, and that just leaves me feeling frustrated, resentful, and it's just like, man, like, I kind of felt like, oh, I already know how this is going to go, why even bother using strategy? Like, it's just, it is what it is. So unfortunately for me, yes, KvKs over the last year have gotten less enjoyable. That's where I'm at, that's where I'm coming from, and hopefully the developers can solve that problem in 2026, because it is, as I've said before, one of the biggest, if not the biggest problem with the game is the fact that the most effective tactic available is piloting, and it shouldn't be. If you guys made it to the end of the video, consider dropping a thumbs up. It really helps out the channel a ton. While you're down there, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time I upload a Rise of Kingdoms video. Comment down below your thoughts on everything we talked about in this video. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.